Whiskey is a drink steeped in tradition, which is one of the things I love about it. But there are some whiskey brands that pride themselves on their innovation. Like Kinahan's, which is actually the first whiskey brand to enter the Metaverse, which is something that I've always been hesitant about. I'm somebody who's still on a single-digit iPhone, but if it's got something to do with whiskey, I'm going to try it out and I'm going to drag you with me. Hey guys, I'm Nath Martin, the Whiskey Scribe. I'm a whiskey enthusiast and I love all things whiskey, which also includes the different ways that whiskey makers choose to market their products. So if there was ever anything that could drag this elder millennial kicking and screaming into the metaverse, whiskey had to be it. So whether you consider yourself a connoisseur, you're interested in knowing more about whiskey, or you're wondering about the metaverse, let's explore it all together. If you want to see more from me, please consider subscribing. I put up new videos about whiskey every week. You can also follow me over on Instagram. Now, Kinahan's is an Irish whiskey label that sources its whiskey from other distilleries and then ages and bottles them under their own label. I recently tried the Kinahan's 10-year-old from the Heritage selection, which you can check out the video here. But they started in 1779 with the intention of doing things differently. And they still live by that. And that's why in 2021, they became the first whiskey brand to enter the metaverse. But if you're like me and you were born before 1990, you're probably wondering what the metaverse is. Now, some companies talk about it like it's some sort of VR world. Others talk about it like it's a gaming environment. The truth is, the lack of definition is because it's so relatively new, it hasn't really been properly defined yet. The best way to think about it at this stage is cyberspace, but with a 3D virtual reality sort of element to it. So 3D environments that you can interact with either through virtual reality or augmented reality. I think. I'm new to this too. Now, Kinahan's may be the first and possibly still even the only whiskey brand to have launched themselves in the metaverse, but it's not as daunting as you might think. I started to look into it and explored it a little bit, and it was nowhere near as overwhelming as I first expected. So you can explore it easily yourself just via the website. There's no Matrix plugin needed.
This will feel a little weird.
I'm gonna have a drink first just to ease my way into it. So if you visit the Kinahan's website and just head to the tab that says Meta, click on that. It takes a little while to load because it's got a bit of an animated feature. It starts off with this dude just running. But as you scroll down the page, you start to see these digital brand ambassadors. And you can go and interact and explore with any of these. So these digital brand ambassadors, you can go and explore any of these. So this guy's name is Nate. He's an Aries apparently. And we're looking at Julian, one of the whiskey reps. He's a digital whiskey rep. He lives on his own little platform here. If we zoom, oh, that's zoom in. Zoom out, he's just floating in space here. He's floating in space in his own little brand universe. If we click on him, we can see a bit more information about this digital rep. As far as I understand, these guys don't actually exist. They've just sort of been created as these personas. We can click on the whiskey bottle that he's holding, which is the Kinahan's Cask Project. So they made this whiskey by pulling apart a bunch of barrels, putting them back together again with different wood from different barrels in the one. Now, if you look over to the left here, how do I look left? It's really counterintuitive. This barrel is that Cask Project. So you can see it's got these different slats from the different barrels, staves, sorry, these are staves. And if you click on the three, it explains a little bit more about that barrel. And behind him over here, he also has this digital artwork. You can find out more about that there, but I'm actually going to come back to these in a little bit later. So that's kind of the extent of what Kinahan's has done so far in terms of entering the brand new metaverse and creating their own brand metaverse. They've created these digital whiskey reps, giving them a little bit of backstory. And the thing is, there's platforms where they can be interacted with. You've got a few different personas there, and I'm not 100% certain what's happening with these, but these don't seem to be active yet, but they are tied to wine. So this may be something else that they're launching later. But where does all this get used? So earlier this year on St. Patrick's Day, a digital pub, the Shaban Irish Pub, was launched on Sandbox. This was a collaboration project with Hermit Crab Game Studio, Web3 journalists Gillian Godsill and Lisa Gibbons, and Kinahan's Whisky. Now, unfortunately, Shaban's was only open for 12 days following St. Patrick's Day, and I missed the event. I even went to the extent of creating a digital avatar. So this Metaverse pub was meant to act as sort of like a haven for wanderers of the Metaverse, kind of like a respite, a place that you can go in, interact and hang out with other people in the Metaverse. Now, there have already been quite a few reviews on this digital pub for that event, which so far they seem kind of lackluster. So many people were excited for a digital environment where you could interact with other people's avatars, but when they got there, it turns out it was actually more of a single player scenario. So even though there were several people entering this virtual environment, you couldn't interact with any of them, you couldn't see them, you would go into the pub and all you would see would be the 7 existing NPC players in there. But at the same time, you could wander around the room, you could interact with some of the features there, you could order yourself a digital Kinahan's, and you could explore for NFTs, which brings me back to Kinahan's NFTs. Now, you probably would have heard people talking about NFTs lately. I didn't fully understand them myself. I just sort of thought of them as some kind of digital artwork. But NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token. So they're created in much the same way that items in blockchain are created. So they've got sort of a digital certificate attached to them, which prevents them from being copied or duplicated. There can only be one of it existing. So they're kind of like cryptocurrencies. Imagine if the Mona Lisa artwork was a digital artwork, but you weren't able to copy and paste it. If you transferred it somewhere, that's where it had moved to. So Kinahan's is offering NFTs in the form of things like 3D branded whiskey casks that you could save on your device or place into an AR room within the Metaverse. You can even resell them as an investment item because there is only one of your exact cask. Now, I couldn't find any records of these having been sold, but they have also done some more detailed art pieces. And that's actually what you see within some of these brand ambassadors' Metaverse rooms. So this here is one of the NFTs that is it's branded with Kinahan's. It's been done by an artist, I believe. If we pull up the details. Breaking Boundaries. This digital art piece is a life-size virtual replica of the Berlin Wall section. The work designed and branded in collaboration with a digital NFT artist. Taking after the Cask Project's whiskey range, this piece is inspired by the culture of breaking boundaries and rejecting the status quo. So they've got these NFT products that you can actually purchase. So if we go back to the website, we can see that there's a few of these digital artworks for sale. Now, the only one that has sold so far is this 3D Formula One racing car with Kinahan's branding. Now, the only one that's sold so far is the 3D Formula One racing car with Kinahan's branding, which sold in 2021 for $4,800. So this is a digital artwork, and while what we're seeing here is images of it, the actual original artwork can't be duplicated. It only exists with the person who purchased it. But you can see there's other artworks here, but for some reason they're all, if you go to any of these, they're listed as coming soon rather than available now. So I don't know what that means, but the fact is that they exist, they are available. I have to imagine if you were to contact them and make an offer, they would probably be more willing to sell it to you. So that's it. So that's whiskey NFTs. I imagine the more exciting NFTs for whiskey lovers would be things like 3D casks, which I get the impression that these are what they mean by that as well. 3D casks that you can circle around and look at from all different angles. And each one's probably a little bit different. I have to admit, these 3D environments are pretty cool.
What's going on here? I'm so bulgy.
So they really are talking up this Metaverse and NFT movement. And while Kinahan's is definitely one of the first whiskey brands to be delving into the Metaverse, it's really more of a toe in the water compared to the Ready Player One scenario I was sort of expecting. And I don't mean that with any judgment. It shows a lot of foresight for a brand to be delving into a new environment like that. I just mean that the Metaverse is nowhere near as daunting as I was first expecting. It's quite approachable and it's definitely in those early stages. If you are a whiskey enthusiast and you haven't delved into the Metaverse just yet, maybe this could be your first foray. Check it out now because it's only going to get bigger and more complicated. But don't worry, next week I'll be back drinking whiskey in real life. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more from me, consider subscribing. But enjoy what's in your glass, your real glass, and slash. Now, how do I drink this NFT?